Hello and welcome to The Solution, where we're trying to scrutinize what does Kabbalah have to say about economy. Hello, Dr. Lightman. Hello, everyone. On our previous show, we started talking about the changes that the world's going through and what do we have to do in order to suit the new world. Throughout or over time, we've built some kind of an algorithm that explains the attitude of the wisdom of Kabbalah, both to how to analyze the problem and also to bring a solution, meaning if we take the right solution, what kind of results will we have? It's a model that many people studied, some of them accepted it, some of them didn't, and we have many questions about this. So what I think that we'll do not only on this show, but also in the future, we'll gradually go over the stages of this algorithm and we'll see how can we update it according to what's going on in the world, how can we deepen the explanation so more people will accept it. And maybe it was previous harder for people to accept it, but after what's been happening lately, maybe it will be easier for them. Is this okay? Of course. So maybe we can see our first slide. Just as an intro, we see that Baal Sulam writes in the Arvut article, he says, two people who were on a boat and one of them began to drill a hole in the boat. His friend said, "Why are you drilling?" He replied, "Why should you mind? I'm drilling under me, not under you." So he replied, "Fool, we'll both drown together in the boat." If we can go to the next slide. And another one. Good. So actually, the picture that we're showing here is that we're all in the same boat. There is a hole in it. Some of the people are trying to save the entire boat, and the other part that are not affected and are having a ball. And I think that this image reflects a lot. If we're all in the same boat, what kind of relations and what kind of economy, safety net, social justice will we have as a result? Look, the entire problem is that all those four sitting on the boat, those four people on the boat, they don't understand that they're in the same boat. And what happens to the boat will happen to everyone. There are those that determine their state according to things for the time being. This is how they see things for the time being. But everything's dry, everything's fine, and the others, they see that the boat is filling up with water and they're going to drown in a moment. So here it all depends on what a person sees. Now, if we make an analogy to our situation, the problem is that we all have to understand that, first of all, we're all interconnected and interdependent on the same boat, and that really everything depends on our mutual work. And for this, you need education. For this, you need the acquisition of knowledge and proof, and to work on the entire population of the world for them to understand how are we all interconnected in an integral society, and what do we have to do in order not to let humanity, this small boat, to drown in the sea. You know, these expressions like we're all in the same boat, global world, this is something pretty common. It's not that it's something that we've invented. On the other hand, we see that really understanding this and what do we have to do is something that people aren't really doing. Don't they understand the interdependence, or they choose not to pay attention to it as long as they're on the right side of the boat? I talk to many people. They're saying, what can you do? I'm alive now. I'm getting along. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? I can't determine for myself more than how's the tomorrow going to be, and surely not for all of humanity, and so I live off what I have now. I understand man's weakness, saying what he says. But on the other hand, these are things that nowadays we can no longer exist according to, because our planet or the entire world is becoming a small place and we're on the verge of destroying it. You can see that no matter if you're middle class, lower class, everyone's suffering. And there is a small amount of people that are really enjoying the fruits of the system, and even that everything else is, collapsing. So I want to ask about the algorithm and go over it stage by stage. So let's start. The first stage, we come and say the problems in economy and in society are not solved. Social justice and man's happiness are moving further and further away. How do you see this? We see it today very clearly, especially in the time of the corona. I think that were such a blow to come to everyone, then everyone enters a state of danger. But here too there is a big difference between the rich and the needy. That these have completely different conditions in order to have their own doctors and systems, and everyone at home has their own device or machine that will help them if, God forbid, something happens to them in terms of ventilation, and there are differences. This on the one hand. On the other hand, I see that we did come closer to each other under this blow, meaning we have what to be grateful for, that the coronavirus came and it's actually affecting everyone. And to the measure to which everyone is trying to keep themselves, protect themselves, the corona treats all of us equally. It's interesting that since capitalism went into more egoistic gear with Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher in the 80s, more and more economic problems came. The burden of the consumerism society put a lot of pressure on people, on the environment, on many things, but still the system, the method is flourishing. It lasts despite all the problems. How is it that it can survive for so long? Look, there's no substitute, as if no one sees any kind of substitute. What can you recommend? And what you can recommend, who'll accept it? Who'll realize it? Because cranny capitalism is very strong, so much so that no one's allowed to come in, anyone who's not a part of these circles, and this is how it continues. What is it leading to? To a point where blows will come from a different direction. Like the coronavirus, like other things. Possibly there'll be outbreaks like tsunamis, volcanoes, earthquakes that will arrange our attitude toward life, toward nature a bit differently. But the coronavirus is much more beneficial because it immediately affects society as a whole, not the infrastructures. And this is the big difference between this blow and the previous blows, like fires, hurricanes, tsunamis, and other things. Or like 9/11. The virus is much more beneficial. I see it as a healing blow. Are you familiar with the concept of the unseen hand? Yeah. When I hear you talking about nature, wanting nature, advancing nature, punishing, people have lots of questions. What is that nature? So I want to mention that also economy and the academy, and they also refer to some kind of force. They don't exactly know how to explain it rationally, but they call it the unseen hand. There's a market, there's an economy, and there's some kind of unseen hand that arranges things, even though that everyone's an egoist and so on. Still, the final outcome is optimum for everyone, and this is what they call the unseen hand. So what's the difference between the unseen hand that we use daily in our language and nature that is controlling us? Unseen hand and nature, the way I see it, are one and the same. We're living in a global and integral system where all of its parts are interconnected, for better or for worse. And all these parts, they keep some kind of balance. And this is how this balance is kept on the levels of the still, vegetative, and the animate. And only on the human level is there some kind of egoistic development that a person cannot stay integral with the still, vegetative, and the animate, and all the more with other people. And this is our entire problem. But the fact that nature is constantly directing us toward an integral system, this is clear, and this is the unseen hand that we don't really feel. But it's there, and it's acting. And we also see it from the different laws of nature, of physics, chemistry, biology, zoology, everything. This is the way that it works. Only man has something called the evil inclination, an egoistic desire that is not a part, which is not integral, that breaks out of this bubble that we exist in, and by breaking out of the bubble, wanting to destroy everything only to the benefit of his narrow ego or his narrow benefit. I think that this can be an explanation for someone who can't accept the concept of nature but can live with the concept of an unseen hand that controls things in a way that we don't necessarily understand. Of course. Okay, now the second stage of the algorithm. The next stage is economy has no solution. Traditional economy has no solution. Those that have an interest are doing what they can in order to preserve things as they are. And we talked about this on our previous show, but still, how could it be that there is such an important profession that advises all those in power, all those that have money, that has no solutions for the problems, but still it controls everything? The profession called economist or economy includes also different professions that have to do with how to organize society. It is not a profession that comes from nature, like physics, chemistry, biology, zoology. It's not what we build out of our research like we do with a still vegetative inanimate, but we're acting on our level, on the speaking level, meaning on the level of human beings. And there we can't see what's going on with us from a higher degree. Because the still vegetative inanimate, we can see it. From above down, I look at them, research, derive different laws, and accordingly I build different instruments, systems, but the degree of man, this I can't know. I don't understand man. I don't understand human nature. For this, we have to rise higher, to a higher level. It's like Einstein said. You want to understand what's going on the table, you have to jump above the table. This is our attitude toward nature, and therefore there's a problem here. That we do not know how to build society because we don't feel humanity. We don't feel man himself, his nature. We've built some kind of a model of who man is, what is man, and we act accordingly. And after we've built this, and a primitive society, feudal society, capitalistic society, doesn't matter which, we have acquired a certain tool case and how to use it in different countries and the world on the human level. And we keep on going. We have no choice. We can't do it any differently. But only our contradiction with the forces of nature, like the outbreaks of nature on the degrees of the still, vegetative, and the animate, this is something that can bring us to some kind of change, to change our behavior. We talked about interested parties that benefit off the current situation and are doing what they can to preserve it. We saw the people on the boat that are on the upper side of the boat. There are those that benefit, and can they stop and say, wait a second, we're in the same system, we have to stop a moment? No, man can't do that. Man's an egoist, and everything that he does comes only as a result of the ego forcing him to. And if we hear that suddenly Bill Gates or someone suddenly donates $10 billion and something else, it doesn't come out of a good heart, from a good heart, sorry for saying so about them, but from the same egoistic calculation that this is how it decides. We can't take these things into consideration. Sure, this will stay as it is, and humanity, if it won't do something by itself, it will advance toward a greater and greater use of the ego, and the successful egoists, they will control the world up to the point where tiny crumbs will remain for those that aren't a part of them. And only the blows that come from the integrality of nature, that by that we breach the entire comprehensive law of nature, only blows like the coronavirus and others will come and will force us, the poor and the rich, to see the system as a round and integral system. And then we will have to change it, either forcefully or through education. Suppose a cancerous cell. A cancerous cell can't restrain itself and eventually dooms itself and the entire system that it developed in. In order not to reach this scenario, what has to happen, or how is nature going to plan our future development in order for us not to reach this situation? Only through education. Only through the education, through building a system that can explain these things, and of course it will be opposed to all of the, let's call them tycoons, and that will educate the people and that will explain to the people, will give them the knowledge of our need to be united and to care for one another, and only this way will we be able to survive nature's blows. Because right now we're in a state that's called by the wisdom of Kabbalah the last generation. Last generation meaning what? It's also called the generation of the Messiah, meaning what? Messiah, Mashiach in Hebrew, also means to pull, limshoch, to pull us out of this egoistic human level. So we have to learn what do we have to do in order to come out of this, and how can nature put the different kinds of pressure on us in order for us to come out of this. And the coronavirus is actually the first stage of these stages in which nature is working on us in order for us to feel and understand that we have to act differently toward each other and toward nature. In relation to the interested parties that benefit off the current situation and are working in order to preserve it, it's pretty easy to understand from this that you're against the rich, the tycoons, no. I'm sorry to say that I'm not against, because this is the force of nature. Were I a part of them without the education that I got from the wisdom of Kabbalah, I wouldn't resist the way things are. I'd behave the very same way they do, because our ego is what controls us, and therefore against them, or I have nothing against anyone personally, of course, but they act according to nature that has arranged society that way, where all of us are, that each of us exists in his small ego. If so, in our explanation, should we emphasize this point from time to time? When I talk about this, I say that we do not blame anyone. Were I in their shoes, I would act the very same way. Some people accept it, some people it makes them really angry. Why? Because it says that it's just a matter of luck. It doesn't matter luck or not luck or who's on what side. We're studying nature. We have to be objective researchers, scientists about what's going on. I look at a tycoon. I understand what kind of person that is and how he behaves. I look at a simple worker. I understand what kind of person that is and how he acts. And everyone acts according to how nature arranged each of us in their own place. Okay, next stage of the algorithm. We're talking about a state where we're actually asking a question. All of these models, these theories, all the tools that the decision makers have, are they taking into consideration the basic fact that economy is a projection, a result, an expression of the relations between us, of our relationships? Probably so, because economy as a whole is based on man's ego and how to make money, how to gain benefit, just like the general egoistic law is minimum investment, maximum profit or income. And this is also how we act according to our own nature, where I'm about to do something, wherever it is, at home, at work, anywhere, to invest as little as possible and to gain as much as possible. This is how our nature acts. And on the levels of the still, the vegetative, and the animate, this is how it has to be. On the levels, on the speaking level, which is something that does not exist in nature, because because on the speaking level we're above the nature of the still, vegetative, and the animate. We're animals, but we have a certain addition, that's the human level. There we will have to determine, after we develop into the human level, and this actually is happening nowadays in our generation, as opposed to all previous generations, so we have to determine new relations. New relations. Which is a good attitude toward each other, to be united as one system. And here we will not be able to survive in any other way. This example that economy is a projection of our relations is pretty clear to people. If you have a shop and comes in a customer that you don't know, the way you treat him and the way your mother comes in, how will you treat her? Or a couple that start out, they have nothing in common. Gradually they have an apartment and so on and so on, and if they get divorced, everything changes. And the same way, the different models in economy. Many people are asking, why is this not the basis for the entire understanding, economical understanding? They say, we understand that relations is everything, but we can't change that. That's a given. I understand them. I'm not against the entire egoistic attitude, but here there is a need for a very special action and relatively long term for us to start changing ourselves with the help of new education by learning what an integral system is, that nature is demanding of us to accept the form of the system, for us to accept this entire concept, to see from research itself, for us to see that the still, vegetative, the animate, each and every one and all of us together were a part of one system. And the universe as a whole is also one system. It is all one system, besides man. In this entire great, big, infinite form, man is the only exception because he has an ego, this foolish kind of desire to think only about himself, not to think about others or even to his own benefit and to the detriment of others. And really here, we're destroying everything by this behavior. Why? Because nature created us this way on purpose, so that from here on we will develop ourselves to a higher level, for us to acknowledge and understand and include the entire integrality of nature in us, and to really reach the understanding of the universe, to really reach understanding the universe and its entire role. What is the difference between an analysis of the eco-social state, economic social state, understanding that this is the key to everything, and an analysis that disregards the fact of these relations, social economic relations? What can I tell you? We are in a developing world, and so the developing of the world that is lately bringing upon us more and more blows, this behavior will teach us. This development will teach us that we have to know where we are, that we have to bend in order to accept this global integral form of nature. And I really hope that we're living in a very special generation, and also what we're talking about now, that all of this is acting to the benefit of society, of everyone, to the benefit of the tycoons and to the benefit of the people that suffer. And nonetheless, all of us will reach the understanding that the world has to be round, just like the system that comes to us from nature. So if we try to discern economic problems and social problems without taking into consideration that the relations between us, between people, that this is the key to the solution, we're barking under the wrong tree. Right. Okay, we're approaching the end of our show, and as a last question, if we're talking about an algorithm that explains the development rationally, what elements of the wisdom of Kabbalah should we insert into it, and where can we leave it as is? I think that we have a problem, those that are engaged in the wisdom of Kabbalah, that we have to make an effort in order to arrange this entire method that explains about the globality and integrality of reality for it to be good and nice and clear to any person, and that we will be able to explain to everyone that the integral in society has to be formed, and we have to build it and shape it by growing wiser, by becoming more interconnected, so much so that really we will meet the law of helping each other, love another as yourself, that it's not just so that those sages from thousands of years ago talked about it. They understood that reality as a whole eventually has to reach this kind of form. Unfortunately, our time's up. Thank you very much. We have still lots of work to do. And until next time, thank you. Thank you. All the best.